In this tutorial, we're going to talk about managing MySQL databases in this section right here. This can be one of the more trickier aspects of using cPanel, but it's actually very useful too. You just have to be very careful that you don't do something wrong, because if you do something wrong to your tables and your databases, then your whole program could go wrong and it could be very hard to fix it, especially for database-driven websites such as blogs or portal systems. So what we do is we click on MySQL. First, what we should do is to create a new database. So when we need to create a new database is that when we need to use a program that needs and stores tables. And a lot of scripts actually need a database before you can install them. So a lot of external scripts, that is. If you use WordPress or other script that's already in the Fantastico suite, which we'll get to, then there's no real need to create a database. But if you use a different script that's not in the list of Fantastico scripts, then you need to create a new database. So let's call this database test1. For anything that's not real, I like to give it the name test, because then in the future I know that I can delete that file without having any bad consequences, because a lot of times you create a lot of files but you forget what those files are. So that's why it's good to create something unimportant and give it a name called test, for example. Then you can know in the future that if you do delete it, it's not a big deal. So we'll create our new database called well, the name is called, well, we've called it test1, but the name of the entire database is actually called, this actually has two parts. The part, the name of our, that's given to us by our web host, in my case here, this is called themi, Themi underscore test1. So this is the name of the whole database that you would need to enter for the database name when you're installing a particular script. Let's go back. When you create a database, you need to create a user for database, as well as the password for that user. So right now we have our database, but we have no user for that database. So I usually give the user name the same name as the database name. We'll call it test1. Password just can be whatever you want to do. You can also use generate password to create a more secure password. So next we create a user, and we've added the user test1 with the password 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Of course, I don't recommend using such an easy password, but for our purposes here, it's okay. Now we have our database as well as the user, but we haven't linked the user to the database yet. So what we have to do is we have to go down here to add the user to the database. Themi test1 to database is also called test1. So just a note, if you do install a script, just remember the name of your database and the name of your user. You need to remember this first part, underscore plus the name that constitutes the name of the user and the name of the database. So not just the second part, it's the entire thing. So we're going to add this user to this database. We click on add. We're going to give this user all privileges. We'll make changes. It's better to give, well, it's a little bit easier to give these, because then that user can do whatever the script needs it to do. A lot of the time a host has a limit on the size of the database, so you might want to double check once your database gets a little bit larger that it doesn't exceed the limit of your host. Now we have our database user linked to our database, and we're done. We can also delete this user if we want to, or even add another user, I believe. or we can delete the database if we want to. So that covers in this tutorial how to create a database and a user with all privileges that links to that database.